On the road to riches speeding, I just hope I'm not lost. Lost some homies along the way, for them I gotta push on. If you ain't here to work, bustin', you can get lost. Thought my heart was freezing, gotta let it defrost. On the road to riches speeding, I just hope I'm not lost. Lost some homies along the way, for them I gotta push on. If you ain't here to work, bustin', you can get lost. Thought my heart was freezing, gotta let it defrost. Working for my younger siblings, tryna get a million. Just want them to be good in the instance I'm gone. Hope my actions show I love you, cause my words might not.
Hello and welcome to the fourth episode of the Minnesota Mike's podcast. I'm your host, Mike Thornton. The music is my nephew, Bay Bandit. You can find him on Instagram at BayBandit_. You can find his music on SoundCloud at Bay Bandit. Please follow me and the social media at Minnesota Mike's on TikTok and on Twitter, at Minnesota Mike's podcast on Instagram. Friends, family, foes, fans, thank you guys so much for joining the show. We got a good one this week. As you know, the Minnesota Mike's podcast loves all Minnesota sports. We've talked about many. We haven't talked about all. The future of this podcast is going to talk more Minnesota sports than we have. But tonight is a Vikings night. Tonight is a Vikings night. Not only is it the season opener, not only is it the home opener, we're playing against our rivals, the Green Bay Packers. And so today's show, we got one interview, and it's going to be a top fan, someone who's literally honored as a top fan for the Minnesota Vikings. And so Josh is very gracious with his time, and I'm honored to have him on the show. So we're going to get into that. I'm going to explain why I'm wearing a Buffalo Bills jersey. I guess you could call tonight the Buffalo Mike's show, but we'll explain that in the interview here. Today, I'm going to keep the intro short and sweet. We want to get into the show. So we're going to start the interview off here pretty soon. Afterwards, we'll talk a little bit of Gopher football as they play a game this weekend at Huntington Bank Stadium on Saturday at 11 a.m. versus the Western Illinois Leathernecks. And Minnesota Twins, we'll talk that after the weekend. Hopefully we can catch some ground on the Cleveland Guardians as we're slipping. We're losing. Looks like we just got swept by the Yankees. So that's a tough one. So yeah, folks, let's get into the interview here with the top Vikings fan, Josh Mathiowetz. Ladies and gentlemen, we've got a special guest in store for you today. The man that I have on this show today as a guest, his name is Josh Mathiowetz. And Josh isn't just a Vikings fan, and he's not just a bigger Vikings fan than I am. He's probably the biggest Vikings fan that I know. Josh was voted a top 60 Vikings fan by the Minnesota Vikings. There's a lot of special things that goes in store with that. And I can actually personally attest that Josh has been a lifelong Vikings fan. I've known Josh since we were in elementary school. He's a good friend of mine, goes on a lot of road games, and he's not your typical Minnesota fair weather fan. This is not just an optimist, but he's a true supporter. Without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, my good friend Josh. Josh, how are you, good sir?
Mike, it's so good to talk to you. I'm doing excellent. How are you?
I'm doing well. It's good to see you. Thank you for being on the show and giving this podcast a chance. And very much looking forward to talking about our first football game here this weekend.
Absolutely, man. I'm excited to be here, excited to support your podcast. And I think this is going to be a lot of fun.
Thank you. And I'm going to say, your background, your setup, I think this should be Minnesota Josh's podcast. I mean, wow, that is a fantastic, phenomenal setup there. And we did talk a little before the show here, so it sounds like you do some videos for work that you can use that setup for, I imagine. So.
Definitely, yes. I have some equipment that I use for work, and some of these big pictures I was able to get from the Vikings. They have a garage sale normally every year of things that are at their training facility, at their practice facility, and I'm able to bid on them or to buy them. And I definitely love a lot of Viking merchandise, and I own quite a bit of it.
Oh man, well that's awesome, and I gotta at least address it. The elephant in the room. Minnesota Mike is wearing Buffalo Bills jersey.
I noticed.
Well, let's just explain this for the audience. First off, We're recording this on Thursday, September 8th, and the Buffalo Bills are at the LA Rams in Los Angeles. So they're opening the season, NFL opener. And so I'm not a jersey guy, really. I love merchandise for my teams, but I'm not a jersey guy. But this is a bit long-winded. I won my first fantasy football championship in 2 different leagues the same year, in the year 2020. The year 2020, our Lord. And it was solely due to Stephon Diggs. I mean, it was an epic, on a Monday night too, last minute, thrill of victory for me, agony defeat for my opponents. But yeah, 2 championships in 1 year. I don't think any man's supposed to have that much goodness in his life, but I did. So I bought the man's jersey. That's why I'm wearing a Bills jersey. So I'm sorry,
Mr.
John.
Minneapolis Miracle himself, right?
You are right. You are right. If anything, I should have bought the Vikings Stephon Diggs jersey. But yes, that was probably my favorite moment.
Listen, I love Diggs. You know, he's we definitely miss him here. I am very excited that we have Justin Jefferson. I think Justin's going to play excellent this year, but I do miss seeing Stephon Diggs, and obviously probably the greatest moment in Viking history with the Minneapolis Miracle. That was the loudest moment I've ever heard in my entire life, being at the stadium that day. That was a ton of fun.
Oh, man, that's definitely the top moment for me. You were fortunate enough to be there. I was with friends that you know from our high school, and one of them, we even teared up a little. It felt like that was the Super Bowl year, but regardless, just that moment, that's what sports is really.
I was crying. I definitely was crying.
Man.
It was a fun time. The following week, not so much, but during that game, during the Minneapolis Miracle, that was awesome.
There's no shame in shedding a tear for your team, and I will say, yeah, exactly. The 1 week it went from tears of joy to tears of pain, but hey,
for sure,
play the game. You never know what you're going to get. But that's okay. So, folks, but yes, top 60 Vikings fans. Y'all might hear that and think, okay, no. First off, there's a lot of Vikings fans. The Vikings are probably one of the strongest fan bases in the NFL. And so, Josh, I know a little bit about it because I know you, and I remember I voted for you, and I felt very good about that.
Appreciate that.
Absolutely, man. You deserve it. But feel free to explain to the audience what goes into being a top 60 Vikings fan.
Yeah, so, going into this 2020 season, that was the Vikings' 60th season. Obviously, it was the start of COVID and all that stuff. And the Vikings posted on Facebook and said, we are looking for the top 60 Viking fans to celebrate the 60th season. So I just made a short Facebook post of, hey, friends, if you know me, you know I'm a diehard Viking fan, and it would mean a lot if you voted for myself. People came out of the woodwork that I had not heard from in years since graduating from high school or even back further than that. And people voted for me. And while I never was told the exact number, I think it was around 60 to 70 different people that put in not just a vote. It was like more of an application. You had to fill out a page worth of material. You had to post a picture and things along that line. And the fact that so many people went out of their way to vote for me for that just meant a ton. It was week 5, I believe, that the Vikings reached out to me and said, hey, congratulations. You've actually won being a top 60 Viking fan. And in a couple of weeks, we're going to announce your name. We're going to have you in the program. Since there were no longer home games that season, they put the Viking program in the Star Tribune. So everybody who had a Sunday Star Tribune newspaper got to see my picture and whatnot. If you go to the Viking Museum right now, there's a whole display of the top 60 Viking fans there, which is pretty cool. They got a custom jersey for myself, a custom football with my name on it, things along that line. So really was a ton of fun, and it opened the door to a couple other experiences. The Vikings reached out to me a handful of months later and said, would you like to be a part of a Viking photo shoot? Of course, I'm going to say yes. So I went there and got a bunch of professional pictures done from the Vikings in my Viking gear. They've used that to advertise for training camp. If you go on Vikings.com right now, and if you were to select tickets, as if you're going to buy tickets to this weekend's Packer game, you got to click on my face to do that, which is pretty darn cool. That's been the case for over a year now. And then they also had me come to a recording of a Viking commercial last year. So during every Viking game, they played my commercial about 2 or 3 times. With me walking to the stadium, and that was a fun event as well. So it opened the door to so many cool things, and I really want to thank everybody who voted for me, because it's an honor, and honestly, it's something I'm very proud of.
Hey, Josh, man, that is so cool. That is so cool. And honestly, you're the first fan that I've had on the show besides myself. I couldn't have thought of a better fan. I mean, that's kind of what I thought of in the podcast, was just to increase the fan support in our state. I think the Vikings fan support is strong. I do. I really do. But, I think it could always be better, and especially for a lot of our other teams. And so, but yeah, you embody what a fan should be. It's not always about wins and losses. We love to see our team win, but at the same time, it's more about those moments. I'm sure you remember the Minneapolis Miracle. I remember it, and it was more so about the people that I was watching it with, and that was just a special moment. So, yeah, good on you, and I am so proud that you were honored. You deserved it. So, well done.
Thank you.
Absolutely. And so, the next question I wanted to ask you is, what made you a Vikings fan, Josh?
Yeah, so you know what? Before I lived in Minnesota, I was down in Florida, and at that point, while there's a lot of football teams down there, I was in Orlando, and Orlando did not have a football team. So really, it was all about basketball at that point. Moved up to Minnesota. I was a Navy brat prior to that, so I'd gone to many different places. Moved to Minnesota. That's when we met each other, and that's where I learned about the Vikings. So about 4th grade, 5th grade is really where I started becoming a fan of football, a fan of the Vikings. And really the primary reason is because of my dad. So my dad, he's not a top 60 Viking fan, don't get me wrong.
Most of us aren't.
Most people aren't, right? But he is a Viking fan. I've owned season tickets with him since 2009. So he owns the other seat next to me. And while he doesn't go to every single game, he goes to a good amount of them with me. And really, it was thanks to my dad who got me in the game. I don't know if you remember Alan Stratton from high school, but that's another one that Alan lived just down the street from me, and him and his family, they had season tickets at the time, and they would bring me to a lot of Viking games too throughout junior high and high school. So that really is when I started to getting to head of these games. Loved being in the stadium every day. Loved the energy and the excitement that you get on Sundays. And so starting in about 2007 is when I started hitting every single Viking game, then getting season tickets in 2009.
Oh, man, that is awesome. Thanks for sharing. I know we share a similar experience because it was really my father that got me into sports. But yeah, the Vikings, I've always been a Vikings fan. I mean, at least since I've lived in Minnesota. We both moved here relatively young, actually. And I didn't know you were from Orlando, though. So that's really cool. I was just down in Central Florida. Beautiful, beautiful place.
It is. I agree.
Yeah. So the next question I want to ask you, Josh. So you mentioned you go to a lot of road games. How many stadiums have you been to in the NFL? And what was your favorite one and why?
Yeah. So I've watched the Vikings play at 18 different stadiums. 3 of those obviously being the Minnesota ones, Metrodome, US Bank, and TCF. So then it's been 15 stadiums outside of Minnesota. Next month I will be in Miami, so I'll be back in Florida for the Viking Miami Dolphins game. So that'll be my 19th stadium. Looking forward to that. I would say the coolest experience that I've been to was London. So I got to go to London in 2013 when the Vikings played the Steelers. While the stadium wise and all that stuff, it wasn't the best that I had been to, just the overall experience walking around London and seeing people in Viking jerseys. And I think even more crazy that you'll never see anywhere else outside of maybe a Super Bowl. Went to the game, obviously, and all around me, people in different jerseys. Because literally what people would do is they would go to the concession stand, or excuse me, the merchandise stand, and they would say, I want that jersey. I want a Bills jersey because I like the color blue, right? It would be no different than if I were to go and buy a soccer jersey from England. I would have no idea who these teams are, right? I would probably buy it based on color and things along that line. So that's what all of these London fans were doing. They bought merchandise and they bought jerseys and flags and things along that line of teams that weren't even playing, but they just liked the color. They just liked being part of the NFL. everybody got Viking flags because the Vikings were considered a home game that year. And they would be waving the flags. They had no idea what was going on. It was a first down. I was cheering and they cheered just because people around them were cheering. So that was a fun experience. In the United States, I would say Dallas probably is my favorite stadium. Went to Dallas in, I believe it was 2013, which was awesome. That stadium is ginormous. More recently, I've been to Atlanta, which is definitely up there. One thing I love about Atlanta, they have fan-friendly pricing. So that's something I wish that we saw more often around the NFL and really around sports in general. I know you go to a lot of sport games as well. And as you know, you buy a hot dog and you're set back $9, right? You buy a beer, you're back $12. Fan-friendly pricing in Atlanta, at least how it was 4 years ago when I went, a hot dog was $2. Unlimited fountain beverages were $2. Nachos were $3. So just really cheap, if you will, food. And I enjoyed it. I was able to eat quite a bit. So Atlanta is great. Went to Los Angeles Stadium last year, the new SoFi Stadium, where tonight's Bills game, and Los Angeles Rams game is going to be. So we've gotten some really cool ones. I would say Seattle and Las Vegas are the two on my list now that I want to go to more than any other stadium. Seattle's been on that list for a while, but next year when the Vikings play the Las Vegas Raiders, that's kind of circled on my. It took me a second.
Yeah,
but,
I'm thinking Oakland. Yeah, you're right.
But that's circled on my list next year, kind of depending on when they play. I'd love to get out to Vegas and watch the Vikings play out there because we are scheduled to be out there once again next season.
Many of us don't need an excuse to go to Vegas, but
exactly
watch your favorite team play as a cherry on top. That is so cool. And the London experience is just wild to me. Going to a game, you're just so used to. I don't even know the word. Just the collectivism and the fandom, right? For a home game, and then you go to London for what you're describing. I mean, it's almost like going to Disney World or something. A lot of different teams, a lot of different colors represented. So that had to be unique.
And it's once again, it's a fandom that I would say maybe 10% from the Vikings and 10% from the Steelers traveled to London. But the other 80% of the people there, maybe 10% of those were actual football fans, but everybody else, literally, it was the hottest thing in town. So they just bought a ticket to go to a football game because I heard that's a big deal, right? So it was fun. That even prior to the game, you're walking around and the Viking cheerleaders are walking around here and there's Victor and whatnot. And these fans are just eating it up. They love it because they're not used to this. They're not used to watching an NFL environment live. Now, granted, that was 2013. So that was at the very start of the NFL going there. Now they've gone there every year. The Vikings are about to play there in a handful of weeks. It's another away game.
Different stadium, I believe. This one is Tottenham, if I'm not mistaken.
That is correct. I was at Wimbledon. Wembley.
Yep, Wembley. I believe you're right. Yep.
One of those is the tennis stadium, and one of those is the soccer stadium. So
we're just a couple of soccer guys here, aren't we? we're showing ourselves. That's okay. Hey,
I'm not an expert of soccer. I am not a top 60 Loons fan. I'll tell you that.
Hey, that's okay.
Good for them. I'm going to cheer them on, but I'm not a top 60 fan. That's for sure.
We'll still cheer on the Loons and the Aurora now.
Exactly.
That's really cool. Man,
definitely
very cool. Okay, so you had some really good NFL stadium experiences. Any rough NFL stadium experiences for the road games?
Philly. So, what was it? It was probably
was it rowdy? I've never had a bad experience on any road game. Every fan base that I've ever encountered has been so nice for the most part. So I'm sad to hear you say that, but I'm just obviously we all know the stereotypes on Philly and the fans.
Philly was rough. So obviously the Vikes went there for the playoffs. Right after the Minneapolis Miracle. I did not attend that game. I attended the game the year before. That Vikings were 5-0 going into that game, and so was Philly 5-0 going into that game. And we scored the first touchdown. Life seemed like it was going to be good, and then we just got our butts kicked the rest of the game. the fans were so rude. I was called things that I should never be called. And here's the thing, Mike, just overall, there are bad, ugly people in the world, but when you go to a sports game, there are the drunk people, the one-offs, right? If you will. I don't pay attention to the one-offs. You're going to have one-offs in every city. There unfortunately are one-offs at US Bank Stadium, right? There are the people that it's like, dude, come on. We're just trying to have fun. Philly was a different story. I'll put it this way. I have no interest in ever going back to Philadelphia because of that. Right. And when I go on these road trips, I normally am with my dad, and we try to make a week out of wherever we're going. So it's not like in most cases that we're just going for the game. In fact, when I'm going to Miami next month, we're going to go on a 5-day cruise after that. Right. So we try to do a trip out of it. Right. We spend money in their town and all that stuff. I have no interest in going back to Philly. The fans were just that rude. And once again, it wasn't just one or two here or there. It was the bulk of them. And I was called names that I should never be called in front of my dad, in front of anyone. And to keep in mind, I don't drink. I don't drink at sport games. So it's not like I'm out of control, right? This is me drinking my Dr. Pepper, trying to watch a football game and cheering on my Vikings. I'm not, I don't go overboard at away games because I very much want to be respectful. But yeah, Philly was something else.
Shoot, I'm proven wrong. I owe my mother an apology because I go on these road games and I sport Minnesota gear. Usually it just invites conversation. People walk up, they might say a little crap, but they'll, oh yeah, I've got a cousin that's from Minnesota, right? Whatever the case may be. And she said, okay, be careful doing that. Do that in Philly. Yeah. You have problems. I always just said, well, yeah, if you're drunk or if you're stupid and you're talking crap, and I don't do that. But apparently you didn't either. And it didn't. They weren't so nice. So that's unfortunate.
And once again, there's a difference between talking crap and being rude about it, right? I'll take people talking crap all day long. That's fun banter back and forth. Cool. Totally. I can somewhat politely dish it back to you, right? As a Viking fan, I'm going to stand my ground. But I go back to there's a difference between that and just being rude, being ugly. So Philly was rough. But most of the other stadiums that I go to, obviously I'm always dressed in purple. I'm not afraid to walk around in purple and whatnot. Most of the other fans have been totally cool. Once again, you'll have the one-offs, but you're going to have those anywhere. But yeah, there's a lot of great fans out there. There's a lot of great football and environments out there. And that's one thing that I've loved being able to go all these different stadiums is I can see how people do things in their neck of the woods. It's pretty cool.
Right. Different cultures, different vibes. Love it, man. I haven't gone to too many road NFL games, but this year, actually, I'll be knocking off one of your bucket list items. Me and my mother will go to the Las Vegas Raiders to watch the Raiders play the Patriots. Las Vegas Raiders. See, I almost got myself messed up there, mixing them up with Oakland. But yeah, so looking forward to going to that.
Love it. That's awesome.
Oh, for sure. Hey, let's get into it, man. This is the season starting. We're playing the Green Bay Packers on Sunday.
On Sunday. I can't wait. Football season is back, man.
Starting off with it. Dang, we're not playing the Lions. No offense to the Lions. I think the Lions will be better this year. We're starting off with the rivals. So, I don't know how you feeling about this year's squad. How you feel about the team this year?
Man, you've known me for a long time. I'm always the kind of person that going into every season, I say, this is our year. We're gonna do awesome, right? But I feel good about this year. And once again, I say that every year. I know, I get it. I'm a diehard Viking fan. I'm never going to change. But the Vikings, I said middle of last year, as much as I love Zimmer, that he needed to go. I said it was time. I know I'm sometimes in the minority here. I'm a Kirk Cousins fan. I love Kirk Cousins. I think that he is one of the best Viking quarterbacks in my lifetime. Now that's not saying much, right?
That's respectable though.
He's one of the best in our lifetime. You're in
a safe territory here. I'm a Cousins fan too. I know I'm gonna probably lose some of my audience. I'm a Kirk Cousins fan. I'm a Tanner Morgan fan, to change the subject a little, but yeah, I think very good quarterback. I mean to cut you off there, Josh.
I've seen bad quarterback play from the Vikings, right? And is Kirk Cousins going to be a Tom Brady? No, he's not. I'll admit that. He's not a Patrick Mahomes. He's not Tom Brady, right? But is he good enough to win games? Yeah, I think he is. We just need, you needed someone who could work with him well, and Zimmer was not that guy. So as much as I love Zimmer the first handful of years, I supported him big time. Middle of last year, I said Zimmer needs to go, and I said what we need is a young, offensive-minded head coach that can work with Kirk, Jefferson, Adam, Dalvin, etc. And what do the Vikings do? They go out and they get a young offensive head coach who just won a Super Bowl, and who can now hopefully mold and make Kirk even better, who can use the offensive weapons that I will say that Minnesota has some of the best offensive weapons out there right now, right? Jefferson could be the best wide receiver in the NFL by the end of the season. That is a possibility, right? He may even overtake Stephon Diggs. If not this year, coming up soon, right? So it really, I'm excited. And we've brought in some players on defense. Zadarius Smith. Yeah, he's going to be fun to watch. Former Packer, man, some of the quotes that he released this week.
He's excited to play them.
He can't wait. And I realize that some people may be listening to this after the Viking game. So maybe, we're eating our words here, right? And, maybe the Vikes lost by 30 or something. But I don't think that will be the case. I truly think the Vikings come out. I think we beat Green Bay. It's a home game. It's going to be loud. It's Fox's game of the week. It should be a ton of fun. Bring on this season. But at the end of the day, Mike, we got to start strong. We have the Packers, we have Philly, and the Saints in 3 out of the first 4 games. If we start losing those, we're going to be in a lot of trouble. This is the type of team that we need to start strong, and we need to continue to go.
Absolutely.
I think we can do it.
You and me both. And I dropped my preseason predictions for the NFC North. I've got our Vikings in first place. I got us at 11-6, somewhere along those lines. Cool. Packers fans may feel disrespected. I actually have them in third, tied with the Lions at 10-6. That could be a prisoner of the moment. I don't know if you NFL Hard
Knocks. Yep.
Yes.
Finished it last night. I love it.
I got an episode left to watch.
Okay.
Yeah, and it's always the worst. There's always the saddest one, the last one. You see the guys, the dreams.
See everybody get cut.
Right? Man, that cut day is tough. And they shouldn't feel bad to make it that far as an honor. But I think this could be the year too. And I'm glad to hear now I know you mentioned every year you've been optimistic. But for the most part, the Vikings have had some competitive teams. So it's not like we've ever had stinkers.
Correct.
We typically are in the thick of it.
We're a great 500 team.
So bad, right?
We're a great 500 team. We're not bad enough to get a top quarterback draft pick, but we're not good enough to win it all.
Historically, that has been the case. Maybe this year's our year. I'm feeling good about it too. Man, I hope so. Boy, that parade, I'd be right there with you. We have 10 minutes. This has probably been the most enjoyable interview I've had so far. And I'm not shocked because it's with a good friend of mine. So hope you don't mind us going a little far in this one. But hey, this is a Viking state, and this will be a Viking show today. I don't know. Let's move off the Vikings a little bit though. You are a Minnesotan. You and I both are. All right, this is our home. Any other Minnesota sports teams you a fan of? You like them all? You're more casual? Is there anyone that you cheer for more than others?
Yeah, I definitely like them all, right? There's only so much bandwidth that I can fit in my head, so I wouldn't call myself a diehard to any of the other ones. But I love some of the moves that the T-Wolves have made recently. The Wild are always fun to watch. The Twins, they've struggled, but I'll try to get to a couple Twins games per year. In fact, one cool thing back in 2019, I was at the Viking New York Giants game, and the Twins actually had just made the playoffs and were playing the Yankees. So I got to go out to Yankee Stadium and watch the Twins Yankees game. We got destroyed that night because it was a playoff game, and Twins haven't won a playoff game since I think we were in junior high. So
brutal.
But I'll try to hit Twins games and T-Wolves games when possible. I watched the whole Gopher game the other night. So definitely a Minnesota sports fan. I wouldn't call myself a fair weather fan there because I'm going to always cheer just against Minnesota, not for other teams. But I'm just not necessarily the diehard fan because said the Vikings are the team. The Vikings are the team that I built my house around and got all my knickknacks and all that stuff for. So,
hey, that's cool though. You support the teams. You got to support the home teams. And when our Gophers win the Rose Bowl, maybe me and you will grab a beer or something to celebrate.
That'll be awesome.
It sure would. It sure would, buddy. Let me think here. So, I'm a food guy, and so I'd love to know, what are your game day eats? What do you do for the big games on Sundays?
Yeah, so when I'm at the game, I'll normally grab something there, or maybe just grab something quick on the way. But anytime that we have an away game that I'm not going to, we always try to study. I'm using the word study in quotation marks, but we always try to look to see what the team we're playing and what that city or that state is known for. So, for example, a week from Monday night, Vikings play at Philadelphia. Glad I'm not going back there. But I will be at home. I'll have my dad, my family over, and I'm sure that we'll be making some Philly cheesesteaks because that's what Philly's known for, right? Anytime that I go to an away game, I try to eat some of the famous food from their area. I know, a handful of years ago when I went to the Kansas City Chiefs game, had some Kansas City ribs there barbecue, just Kansas City barbecue in general. It was fantastic. So
it's tough to beat that.
Yeah. But so definitely try to find some sort of food that either is from that area or has the name on it. A lot of times when we play the Chicago Bears, I'll have a Chicago deep dish pizza or something along that line. Right. So I love me some food. Obviously I never go hungry on game day. Either have the smoker cooking, smoking meats for 24 hours before the game, or sometimes we're doing something like Philly cheesesteak. So never go hungry.
I always do it to myself. Always in it with food. And I always get hungry at the end of these shows. And today did not disappoint there. So, boy, that sounds good. Man, I should be watching the game at your house next week with the Philly cheesesteaks. Honestly, yeah. So, really, Josh, I mean, that's about it. That's all I really had today. We both feel good about our Vikings. Our Twins are struggling, but who knows? They're in the thick of it. They still have about 3 games. I think they're behind right now, if I'm not mistaken.
Yep.
So, but no, this shows the Vikings, and who I'm just going to glance over the TV, just for so this is Thursday, right? This is Thursday, September 8th, and it looks like the Buffalo Bills, Stephon Diggs, baby, are winning 7-0. Do you have a prediction for tonight's game? So it's already started. Bills are up 7-0 first quarter. What are your thoughts on tonight's game?
I actually really like the Buffalo Bills this year. I really do. I think they're going to do excellent. I think they have a shot at going to or winning the Super Bowl. So it should be a lot of fun. And tonight, I would say that the Bills win.
I can't remember who it was. I was talking to a friend the other day, and they said they predicted the Super Bowl this year would be the Vikings and the Bills.
You know what? That's probably who I would choose. Obviously, I'm going to always choose the Vikings, right?
Right.
But then the other team, I would say, battle of Stephon Diggs teams, right?
Yep. I was thinking more so. Yeah, you're absolutely right. And also the battle of the teams that have won been 4 Super Bowls and haven't won one yet. But us Vikings, we have won an NFL championship.
That is correct.
For the Super Bowl. So that you got to count that.
I want one Super Bowl before I die. That's what I want, man.
It's got to happen. This fan base is good. This
one
team
Super
strong,
Bowl before
man.
I die.
We got to do it. And if there's a fan that deserves it, it's our favorite fan here, Josh Mathiowetz, top 60 fan, top 1 friend. This is a great man and a great dad and a great husband. Josh, thank you so much for being on the show. Good to talk to you, brother.
Mike, it's so good to be here. Thanks for having me on. Go Vikings.
Go Vikings. Skull. I'll have you on again, man. Looking forward to it.
Appreciate it, buddy. Appreciate
you. Folks, I hope you enjoyed that interview. I really had a good time, if you couldn't tell. Man, it's so fun to connect with old friends. But honestly, I'm honored to have Josh on as the first fan on this show. That's really what the Minnesota Mike's podcast is all about, and he embodies it. Had a great time with Josh. Before we end the show, I'd be remiss if I didn't at least touch on Gopher Football, as that is. It's probably my favorite Minnesota sports team. That's definitely up there. And so, yeah, this weekend we've got a game against the Western Illinois Leathernecks. There's a lot of Gopher podcasts already out there. If you're a podcaster and a Gopher fan, you probably already heard a breakdown of the game. So what we know is that this is an opponent that we should beat. It looks like the spread is even bigger than it was versus New Mexico, if you're into the sports betting. And so, be careful betting taking the over on those big spreads for Gopher football. But hey, we did it last week. Maybe this is the year where we start, beating our inferior opponents by a lot, like we should. And certainly did that week 1. So that's what I'm hoping for week 2. Honestly, let's just get the win. Let's get out of there injury free. We got the Big Ten season eventually coming up. But let's get through this non-con with them in Colorado, and let's get ready for the season. Monday's guest is going to be very special. It's a Minnesota Twins insider, and so we're going to talk Twins. And hopefully, after this weekend, we have a little bit more life in us. As it looks like we're slipping. So the AL Central is slipping out of our hands, but hopefully we can recapture it and have a magical September. Therefore, we can go ahead and win the AL Central, which is likely what it'll take to make the playoffs. We've got some cool things in store, though. So I'll be going to a cool season ticket holder event where Dan Gladden will speak, Twins Hall of Famer for the Minnesota Twins Hall of Fame, Dan Gladden. And so, World Series champion, excellent player in his day. And so try to give you all some of my experience there. And eventually we're going to start talking some other sports here. As you know, I'm determined to talk women's sports. I'm in contact with some really high-profile women's athletes for some of the college teams here. And so we're just got to go through the channels, get into compliance there. We want St. Thomas on the show. So I'm in contact with a stud player for one of the St. Thomas teams as well. But soccer is a sleeping giant in the state. It's a growing sport with the Aurora and with the United. I'm a little embarrassed to say that I have never been to a European football, if you will, European football game or match. See, I'm not a soccer guy, as you can tell. But I'm going to educate myself because I know there's some fans out there that love soccer. Some people like to play FIFA like a lot of my friends do. And so what I'll do is Tuesday, I'll be going to my first football, right? First soccer game, Minnesota United. And I'm really looking forward to that. Looks like they're playing LA. They're just the best team in the league, if not one of them. So very much excited for that. But this show is going to be short and sweet. So that you're likely, who knows when you're listening to the show, but we're dropping it this weekend before college football after the Thursday night game. Yes, thank you all so much for being a part of this. This show is doing pretty well for just being solo dolo, me by myself. And so I'm encouraged and determined to do better. As you can tell, the lighting's a little bit better. And so, yeah, we're going to keep making this thing a better product and just improve the content. But as I've said, I don't care if you're a Vikings fan, a Gopher fan, a Twins fan, soccer, if you're a women's sports, man's sports, doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. We're all on the same team here at the Minnesota Mike's podcast. Thanks, folks. Have a great night and a great weekend.
Steady heading, don't nobody see the vision till after you made it. On the road, rich is speeding, I just hope I'm not lost. Lost some homies, run away for them, I gotta push on. If you ain't here, it'll work, busky, you can get lost. Thought my heart was freezing, gotta let it defrost. On the road, rich is speeding, I just hope I'm not lost. Lost some homies, run away for them, I gotta push on. If you ain't here, it'll work, busky, you can get lost. Thought my heart was freezing, gotta let it defrost. Young, black, and wild, and I know they hate it. Since I was a youngin', I've been counting payments.